All right, I think we're live now. My name is Misigoy, Libertarian for the U.S. Senate here in the state of Florida. I think something's up with my camera in terms of how the lighting is coming through, but whatever, man. We're gonna go ahead and do this. Another Thursday live stream. We want to make sure we don't miss out. Make sure we come and speak to the things that matter, and obviously, if you guys have questions, definitely address those as well while you guys are on here. So, good to be with you guys, and talk a little bit about some of the recent events or whatever events might matter, whatever questions people have. So I've had a few good conversations the past few days. I'm going to make sure we got to add a few links to some of those on the website. Yesterday had another interview, went live with David Sbria, a little short one, talking about some of the recent events, the FBI raid on Trump in Mar-a-Lago, and I can talk a little bit more about that again here today. But in addition to that, let's see, also a little bit of conversation we had yesterday evening, a little AMA with LP Talk Radio on Cubs. So that one, there should be the recording of it. I'm going to see if I can get a link to that as well, get that posted on the website so that folks have access to it. I try to make sure you guys have access to as much of the content as possible through there so that, the stuff that I said, you guys can go and hear it and actually know where I handle the issues. Not like, some of these guys, the establishment politicians, maybe they'll give an answer to a question, but they may not want actually other people to hear it over and over. For example, when they talk about where they stand on issues like gun control, when Republicans, proposing a solution or giving the solution to a left-leaning audience that they're going to support red flag laws and things like that, and they think that's the solution. They don't necessarily want Second Amendment folks to hear that. Likewise, the Democrats who maybe want to try stake some kind of claim over the police reform issues and that things that they don't really want to be on camera for other folks talking about how or actually having to defend a stance to do something maybe about qualified immunity or anything like that. I want you guys to know where I stand on the issues. We're not afraid of the tough questions, and that's just part of the game. So, and obviously, I want you guys to know as much as you can about me and share that with everybody else. Because the only way this moves. So, let's see. In addition to the stuff I just mentioned that we had earlier in the week, coming up next weekend. So not this weekend, but next weekend, the 19th and the 20th. I got a couple of events up in the Panhandle, up in Pensacola. Folks that are out in that end of the world, out of that corner of state, if you can make it out, come out and join us. I have at least one of the events, which is Gallery Night in downtown Pensacola. There's another event. I'll post information to it. There's already, I think the state party, at least on some of the social media, has posted links to it. It's going to be featuring me and a buddy of mine, Anthony Welty, former candidate out in Washington State. But let's go on to it, man. Let's see. In addition, so we got other stuff in the works, but let's go ahead and talk about some of what's going on. In particular, obviously, the big news story last week has been, the raid on Trump. It's sort of an interesting thing to watch and see how the discussion's on. Let me just try and tweak this for a second, see if it's any better now. Still going on with the lighting here, but whatever, man. We're just going to roll with it. So the raid by the FBI on Trump is stated. It's it's interesting to see the response from people, in particular the Republicans. I use those left and right terms very loosely, but from Republicans in general and folks who've been supporters of President Trump, who look at that and they're outraged and they look at the FBI. And now some of them are getting on board saying either tacitly we need to reform the FBI. Some people jump on the way of abolishing the FBI. I want to let it be known that a lot of us in the Libertarian movement, Libertarian Party, have been talking about this for a while. I've been talking about it for a while. My what's it called? My attention was sort of renewed on this subject earlier this year, maybe a month or two ago, when talking folks, and really honing in on the some of the more recent history with the FBI. Folks who are familiar with the history of the FBI know that from the time it was founded under J. Edgar Hoover, it was already a politicized organization. They were in the business of illegal surveillance and blackmailing political figures. There was a particular focus on civil rights leaders at the time. And, you know, there really was never a clean break from that kind of leadership. Really at a time when this or many of these other organizations in the federal government, you know, had some kind of clear turnover and reform that happened where they turned away from their evil ways and became the sort of agency that we see depicted in popular media. You know, we watch television programs and movies, and they depict the FBI and CIA and these other organizations in a certain way where their focus is, you know, the best interests of the country, security, upholding the law, all these sort of righteous things, or things that were told are righteous, but are presented in a certain positive way. Very rarely do you see a depiction that reflects some of this other stuff. You know, again, you know, illegal surveillance and attempts at blackmailing people like civil rights figures. You know, I mean, if you really want to delve down to the history of stuff, you know, go look up kind of what their relationship was with Martin Luther King Jr. Much worse than if you want to go look at what happened to so interesting stuff and a bad history. And so what you see in the more present time, though, has been particularly with the era of the War on Terror, where you have the FBI, maybe some other agencies as well, sort of infiltrating communities, targeting impressionable youth to radicalize them, and then manufacture terrorist plots to then entrap these guys in. Like I said, that's something that was happening very commonly in Muslim communities, but it's something they've really expanded out as they kind of broadened narratives that they have about domestic terrorism. We saw with the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot that was pretty much almost entirely pushed by these feds. We have some sense of certainly a big question about their involvement. 6 has become this lightning rod for the discussion, or certainly something that Democrats just want to keep beating the drum about. You know, it's very telling, and if you haven't seen it, I really encourage you. There's a clip of Senator Ted Cruz questioning somebody from the FBI. FBI federal agents' involvement in January 6th, and it's, you know, basically every question is, I can't answer that. I can't answer that. I can't answer that. And really gets you a sense of what we're dealing with, and this is just another manifestation of it. So I think people really do need to have recognition that it has always been politicized, and what the effect that is, and the fact that again, what we're sort of always seeing depicted in popular media. So and those are just some of the reasons why. Not because, again, because they finally just decided to raid a sitting president, or not a sitting president, a former president. It's what they've done to regular people, which is what really drives my opposition to it. And in general, the politicization of it. It's one of those reasons, and at the same time that they're doing all those things, what we don't get is them going after and arresting people, for example, who were involved with and I'm going to pivot over to a little bit different story here, the Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, child sex trafficking ring. By now, the story is pretty popular consciousness. This guy who had access to all this had this put down the grid, and he's, you know, trafficking young girls for sexual favors that they share, and at least some of the worst sort of crime you can imagine, and, you know, basically pimping them out to the wealthiest, most powerful, most elite. We have some idea of some of the people who are there, but feeling that in the past, Epstein had been convicted. Ghislaine Maxwell was pretty recently convicted, but they're convicted of trafficking and providing these young girls to who? None of those people charged, arrested, prosecuted. Why? Why do we have a Department of Justice and these federal law enforcement agencies? What good are they if, putting aside the other issues, but if they're not even going to do this thing of going after these kind of worst crimes being committed by guys, but you would imagine a federal police force would have the resources to go after them. So the question is, so I got a little connection issue with a kid in there. Let's see if we're good from now on. But this is just again, what do we have these agencies for if the agencies aren't even going to prosecute these kind of crimes? This is the worst of the worst, most indefensible. And this is actually something I talked about and appeared in an article, Human Events, written by Eliza Blue. If you check on social media, I think I've posted it on at least the big three social media. I don't have a way for posting articles on TikTok, but we're gonna get it on that one. Anyway, the point is that we have these crimes that we know conspirators who connection. Trying to see what's going on with the. Might need to raise something. Let's see once we're back. Or I guess I should be back now, I think. Conversation. Hopefully this the hardware over here does not continue to act up. Always one thing or another, I suppose. Anyway, the continuing on. Again, what's happening with these other and how do we make something happen about it? So one of the things, the point of this article, focus on this article, was in terms of any political movement willing to step up and actually try to make something happen here. Clearly, it's not going to happen for Republicans. It's not going to happen for any of them want to have people, but that leaves to the next party. We're willing to stand on this. There's quotes from other members of the folks that are candidates, Chairwoman McArdle, and including myself. And I'll tell you one of the things that I is look, we to actually. I said, look, I'd be willing to withhold 100% of the Department of Justice's funding. Obviously, I'd only be one senator, but that I think is the way to lead the conversation. Look, no money that goes to any of these agencies cannot operate without the approval of it to vote on and pass legislation that grants them their funding. So, I'm not going to give you what you need to operate if you job. It's a pretty simple thing. It's we all have to do our life. Each one of us works a job. Look, if you don't do the job, you don't get to keep the job. You don't get to get getting paid if you're not doing the job. And our Department of Justice isn't doing their job when it comes to these crimes. They've put it on the back burner. They just want everybody to forget about it. It's radio silence from the federal government today on these issues, and that's just not acceptable for folks who really see this as a serious issue. And again, we talk, and not just we talk, but a lot of people talk about it and throw around these terms like justice and law and order. And how can you have any justice or law and order you have possible above everyone else that aren't held accountable for these kind of worst sort of crimes. So me and a lot of other libertarians are committed to that. So if you have no other kind of tiebreaker, just remember that the only candidate you're going to have from the ballot for the U.S. Senate here in Florida that is willing to stand up for crimes and hold the perpetrators accountable, and hold our Department of Justice accountable for holding them accountable, if that doesn't sound a little too extended, I'm the only candidate. Okay? There's nobody else. Michael Rubio's not going to do it. He's in the Senate right now. He's not even trying. Val Demings, she's in the U.S. Congress. Forget about it. She didn't have a word to say about the Epstein case. The other NPAs and folks who are in the race, I haven't heard them say a word about it either. The floor is open for everybody who wants to take a stand. But I don't hear from any of these guys. So if you want a candidate who's going to stand for that, I am the only one. So that's another take. All wasteful spending, overseas adventurism of our foreign policy. I believe in a foreign policy of peace, not antagonizing, because you don't even need to be an interventionist to what we're doing at this point is crazy. We can kind of escalate the conflict going on in Ukraine. In addition, we've got Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan and trying to stoke fires of a conflict with China, with mainland China. It makes absolutely no sense. At a bare minimum, from a purely self-interested geopolitical strategy viewpoint, at a bare minimum, you would think, well, look, if we're picking a fight, or at least in some level of a conflict with one other nuclear armed power in the world, at a bare minimum, you wouldn't want to be starting a conflict with the next with the other. It doesn't make any sense. So you just pick one or the other at least. Obviously, my just be let's not get in conflicts with anyone. Let's de-escalate the conflicts. That does involve some amount of compromise, and I know there's some people that are uncomfortable with that. I think that the U.S. should really, die on its sword for all these other countries and be willing to make the American taxpayer suffer to no end. President Biden said, you're going to have to pay the cost, and we're going to have to do this so that we can, fight the Russians here and down to the last Ukrainian. Americans have to make a sacrifice, and they said, how long? And said, as long as it takes. I'm not with that. I believe, and again, just in the same way I would be willing to use the power of the purse to not allow a Department of Justice to continue to continue to operate if it's not willing to do its job and actually go after and prosecute people who commit heinous crimes, even the ones who are among the elite. To do that, fund State Department that engage in diplomacy with our quote-unquote adversaries, the countries that we're in conflicts with, to de-escalate things. It's sort of thing and really frustrating, or it's just exemplifies kind of part of the problem. Since the Russian invasion into Ukraine began, for almost all of that time, our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, had not talked to his Russian counterpart, Foreign Minister Lavrov, to try to work out anything with this stuff or try to de-escalate the kind of negotiation or whatever. They haven't done anything of this sort. In fact, they did finally, but in the process of trying to get Brittany Griner, the WNBA player, who was arrested and recently sentenced to 9 years there. It is remarkable, and that story has a couple angles to it, because obviously one of it is the whole geopolitical stuff of Russia holding a prominent American, and our administration is willing to go into to negotiate to try to bring this prominent a celebrity, basically as a sports celebrity, home, but they negotiate to try to de-escalate this actual conflict, military conflict, is costing lives and destroying Ukraine. They're not willing to do that. They would much rather, send tens of billions of our dollars to Ukraine for weapons, or really send the money to Ukraine, sending it to, you know, defense contractors, military industrial complex, building weapons and stuff, and then sending the weapons over to Ukraine. And I forget what the actual number was in terms of how much has actually gotten there. But there's an interesting angle to that. But again, we're willing to sacrifice all of this to go after Russia. We're not trying to get peace, though. We're not going on the other side of that. The only time they're negotiating is to try to bring home Brittany Griner over a charge which is basically sort of marijuana possession. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but it's basically possession of a certain kind of drug paraphernalia, and again, it's held because at the same time this is happening, that we're going to these extreme lengths of trying to do prisoner transfers and high-level negotiations. At the same time, marijuana is still prohibited at the federal level in this country, and you still have people that are in prison for marijuana crimes, for nonviolent marijuana offenses, and it is again, and this is one of those things also where it's not like the president really has an out to say, well, he needs Congress or somebody else to do something. It's fully within their purview in the executive branch to deschedule marijuana and to issue pardons to everybody who, for every charge or sentence related to marijuana possession or any other nonviolent marijuana-related crime. It's totally within there. And the best part about it is that to some degree ran on this. They put out statements when he was candidate back in 2020 and 2019 that he didn't believe that anybody should be in prison for stuff. Of course, he's also been a big pusher of the war on drugs in the past, and very seeing three-strike laws and things of that nature. So, some really terrible policy along the same lines. But as a candidate for U.S. president, he was running on this whole thing about it. At least, again, not his main issue, not the central issue. The central issue was, I'm not Trump. It was blue MAGA, restore the soul of America. It really, when you break it down, it really isn't that far from make America great again. It's just he wants to go to a different good old days, the good old days of 2016 instead of the good old days of I don't know when for Trump. But in any event, it is just this great juxtaposition or contrast between the lengths that we're going to go try to get a celebrity out of prison in Russia for drug possession, while at the same time we're going to let people rot in prison here in America for essentially the same crime, because they're not celebrities, because they're not connected, and they're not that important. I guess maybe also because there's an angle around it as well. Take your pick, but either way, it's kind of repulsive when you really stop and think about the fact that these are, talking about people's lives, people who haven't violated anyone else's rights, a lot of cases, who are left to rot in prison over these charges, and yet we're willing to go to all these lengths, to get one person out, the rest of them, because they don't have these connections, or because it wasn't in this situation, they're not prioritized when it would be actually quite easy for us to do it. So, it'd be great if we took a principle of drug prohibition, but obviously, again, that's not something you're going to get from the mainstream. You're going to get it from the Democrats, you're going to get it from the Republicans. You're only getting it from the Libertarian candidates. So if you agree and believe that nobody should be thrown into prison over a plant or having a cartridge with the oil or whatever, flavored products getting banned by people in Congress because, again, we just haven't created a big enough black market for organized crime to enrich itself yet with all the drugs that are on the black market. We just keep making it worse. And I'd like to make it better. I'd like to, get rid of the prohibition and all the problems that cascade down from it. It's not going to create utopia. There will still be some problems. There will still be some addiction, but it will be infinitely less bad than what we have today. Things will improve because we won't be exacerbating problems. We won't be creating all these incentives for things to be more potent and more dangerous. There's so many downstream impacts of what we have created, what exists because of the war on drugs in this country, and so it's just another example of something that needs to be stopped and is not going to stop under the established leadership. So that's a few big points. I'm trying to think any other issues. Haven't got too much. I know we came on an awkward time here, so we're probably going to be looking at people watching this later on. Excuse me. But trying to see what other topics to get in here. We got a couple more minutes on here. If you haven't already, on the website, we have a new link at the top which says shop. You can go through our friends at libertarian.com. From my website, it'll link you over there to get the yard sign. Go show off to your neighbors that you care more about liberty than anybody else in your neighborhood by putting up a Misigoy for U.S. Senate sign. Working on getting a bumper sticker so that that'll be available for everybody who's driving around a lot. Maybe you live in an apartment, so you want to. I said it'll not bumper sticker. It'll be a car magnet. So we're looking at that in case, because I know some people like my wife doesn't really like putting bumper stickers on the car, but something you can put on and take off. Because the election season is only so long, but hopefully it'll make you proud that you can keep it on for even longer. So we're working on those. Those will come out in the near future. And what else do we want to make sure we get in? Like I said, there's some new interviews, a new article, and anything else I want to do. Oh, we'll make a joke about the 87,000 IRS agents. This is obviously an absurd story. Some people saw the hiring the hiring listing for IRS agents. One of the things is, be prepared to use deadly force, carry a gun on you. You got to understand that what they're talking about hiring here is not kind of an IRS agent like you think somebody who's like doing an audit on a computer somewhere. It's quite interesting, and somebody actually had a post I made it. I'm not the only person probably who made this joke about it, but talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of ammunition that the IRS was buying up as well. And, certainly, as we hear from the president, I'm sure they're only going to be shooting people that are making over $400,000 or more. Little joke there, because they keep insisting that, those are the only people who are going to get tax increases. Of course, it's complete nonsense, just like is with the Inflation Reduction Act that they have been pushing through in the House. And it's absurd. It is, it's crazy because basically just taking the same legislation they've been trying to push for all these other issues, climate change stuff, and they're talking about, spending on this and that, and I'm trying to think, healthcare stuff, price caps, and this, that, and the other thing. They're talking about all this other stuff that really has nothing to do with inflation. In fact, by government doing these things is going to exacerbate inflation, make inflation worse, because there's going to be stuff they're paying money for, no matter what they tell you in terms of raising taxes. Again, after I look at federal tax revenue over the last decade, particularly, at least throughout the entire Trump era, because this is the narrative they like to push. Oh, Trump and the Republicans, they cut taxes, so the richest, people weren't paying their fair. So that's why we have debt and a deficit and everything else. And it's total and utter nonsense. Federal tax revenue went up every year of the Trump administration and has continued on through to the Biden administration. You can debate whether that money carries the same value, obviously due to the inflation, but again, they've had more and more and more and more dollars in the bank to work with that they've been collecting from the American people. The problem is they just keep on spending more and more and more and more and more at a higher rate than the tax revenue increases. And let's not forget that at the same time lower some income tax rates. At the same time, they also added some taxes by imposing tariffs on a lot of goods coming from overseas. It may not be that exactly, but the point is that it wasn't a one-way street, and on the whole, federal tax revenue went up. It's just that spending went up faster and always outpaced it. There is only one solution to dealing with all of this. Well, I shouldn't say only one solution, but there's one key part of the solution in terms of that, in terms of balancing budgets, is cutting spending. If you're not willing to cut spending, we're never going to get there. And when I say cut spending, we're not talking about cut increases and reduce the rate that spending increases. I'm talking about cutting spending. Okay. For example, the NDAA for next year that's being bandied around is over $840 billion. Okay, we could literally cut that in half. Literally cut it in half, and we'd still be not just number one in the world, but number one in the world by a huge margin, 100 billion, maybe 200 billion ahead of the next country, which is China, in terms of spending. So there's no reason we can't do it. We just need to demonstrate the will. I have the will to do it as a legislator, but I can't do anything but I can't do that if I'm not elected. So it's on you guys a little bit as the voters to exert that will, and also to support the campaign in any way you can. Thank you guys for joining me. Please share and support this, spread the message, and I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you.